what's going on, guys? It's your boy Zilla back at it again with a new video. For this new series of videos, what I will be doing is just to have a decent stream of content flow out, so that obviously keep the channel relevant and all of that. I am going to be doing these unscripted series of videos called Kaiju Character Talk. Now, what these entail is I will be talking about different kaiju designs I have made and surrounding a different topic of creating a kaiju character. So, these will cover specific fields such as certain archetypes and kind of what I've done with a specific archetype if I've worked in it into some capacity, and where the archetype came from, and sort of like maybe pitfalls, what do you know, the whole 9 yards of like character creation in this case. None of these are scripted, so they're going to be very random in certain cases, and which are going to be, you can just kind of listen to these on your own without kind of seeing what is actually on the screen. All you're going to be seeing is this one still image here that has just kaiju character talk, the episode, what the title is, and a series of characters I've drawn while I talk about them. So you got that? Let's get into it then. So, obviously the first episode is going to be on Dinozillas. Now, what is a Dinozilla, might you ask? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's a dinosaur kaiju, most likely bipedal, has some back plates, maybe a beam weapon, and it's obviously based on Godzilla. Yeah, with Godzilla obviously coming out in 54 and still doing pretty good to this day. The people who have made kaiju of their own volition, usually the Dinozilla is probably the most common character you'll see. They may be a little bit more derivative, and you might make something like what I've made here, or you might just make this is another Godzilla, and you see, he's not Godzilla, even though he looks like Godzilla but a different color. So those are the two kind of Dinozillas that people can make, while you can get a little bit more creative in certain cases. But that's basically the gist of the Dinozilla. Now, the Dinozilla is comprised of about 2 different dinosaurs in most cases, those being a large theropod, usually a tyrannosaur, and a herbivore with back plates, which is a stegosaur. And as you can see, there is one on the bottom left that really resembles stegosaur plates, and I'll get to him in a little bit, but I'll start with the bottom right, and similarly has stegosaurus like back plates. Now, this kaiju I made was for the series of novels that I am working on currently. It is called, this monster specifically is called Gigantis. It was specifically done because I wanted to use the name as a reference to Godzilla. Gigantis isn't a copyrighted name from Toho, I believe. So, yeah, what I did with it was I used the kind of big, large Allosaur head, not really T-Rex, but also very famous theropod. The crest was similar to that of Monolophosaurus, a not as common theropod when it comes to people when they think of dinosaurs, but it's gotten enough, not exactly clout, you could call it clout maybe, but that's what I wanted to do for the crest. Just standard Stegosaurus backplates, large grasping 3-fingered hands, and big digigrade legs. Now, I made me talk about Gigantis first because it's got something that none of the others do, and that is feathering. Yes, I made a Dinozilla with feathers. Dinozillas with feathers aren't usually very common, because, of course, feathers are something that people think of as fluffy, and it's not cool, or as the so-called paleo enthusiasts would like to say, it is not awesome bro enough, which I think is a retarded term in and of itself. But yeah, Gigantis was a lot of just subverting what is traditional with Godzilla. So Godzilla usually has a small head, so I gave him a big head, very mammalian head, very reptilian in this case. Give him a crest with a different color, large hands compared to Godzilla's smaller hands, digigrade legs next to Godzilla's plantigrade legs, 2 rows of spines instead of Godzilla's 3, and There's no spines that run down the rest of the tail. The rest of the tail is just the feather and the scaly part. For abilities, I just wanted to do classic fire breath, or what people think Godzilla shoots from his mouth. It's not fire, of course. If you know anything about Godzilla, it's atomic ionizing radiation. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do with my first Dinozilla here. Gigantis was subverting a lot of what you would traditionally think of when it comes to Godzilla. Now, middle left, or no, not middle left, middle center is Ruger. Ruger is a kaiju I am working specifically for a short story that I want to get out sometime in the future. And well, a lot of the design was what can I do with a dinosaur design and slim it down but make it still big and threatening. So proportionally, the head, I wanted to make the head still pretty big. The spines, it's similar to Gigantis in the case where there's two side spines that are the biggest pair, and then there's spines that are run down the middle as well as behind the main row, all the way down to the tail. And there's two sets of horns above the head. There's the two main ones that stick out, and then two that stick out near the back. Horns or spines running down the front of the snout. Got a little dewlap for the throat, similar to probably 98 Godzilla or Zilla. Very small arms and very skinny legs. Very small boy. When it came to coloring, a lot of Dinozillas tend to be a solid color, with the spines being the only thing that's really different. There isn't really like striping, and there isn't usually counter shading either. In this case, I wanted to do black for the spines, which I translated also into the legs and the top of the back as well. Green being the main part. The eye around itself, it's a red with the actual eye itself being a kind of dark orange, and a brown running down the stomach. The only Godzilla that's really done that when it comes to coloration is the 2014 Godzilla. So there's a lot, you people don't really want to have that many colors, and they usually just stick to the charcoal gray or green. But expanding out, looking at colors that you can do to change it up a little bit and splotching things around, like I decided I want to have the black being the top shading part of this animal. I thought would be a nice touch, because you go from dark to not as dark with the green but still very dark, and then the lightest part being the underbelly, counter shading. For the legs, actually, this is where I started doing the trend of having less toes than normal. There's only 2 toes on the front, 1 in the back. This was because in Spore there was a specific leg that I liked, or foot I liked using. So because of that, I just really liked how that always looked on my creatures in that game, and that carried over into my drawings. And having the toe actually stick out like this, similar to a bird's feet, would be carried over into the next design here, which is Dinogillis. It was a series of designs I was doing for not really a project, but an exercise called Kaiju RO. So I would take a Toho Kaiju, in this case obviously Godzilla, and sort of boil down certain traits of the character to a very generic design in this case. So it's just standard Stegosaur backplates, very small T-Rex arms, standard T-Rex head, spines, yada yada, charcoal gray, brown belly. I wanted to keep the same counter shading, which I really always liked with my designs, and that's it. With the red on the top of the head itself was based more on Abelisaurs, so that's Carnotaurus, Scorvivinator, Rugops, all of those kinds of dinosaurs, the ones that have very small hands, even smaller than Tyrannosaurs. I like that head design. It's very kind of rounded, and these are also dinosaurs that don't have feathers, or we don't think they had feathers, so having my design be inspired by a dinosaur that doesn't have feathers while also not having feathers themselves, unlike Gigantis, was something I really felt like doing. Moving on to the top right is Zimzilla or Zargosaurus. I always flip-flop on the names, but yeah, this is Zimzilla. I think anyone who knows me has seen this design before. This is where I took a lot of Godzilla influence, especially with the spines here, which was Zilla-inspired designs. The head was also very Abelisaurid, but of course, this is an alien, so gave it the two like large crest, and then there was 3 eyes, so 6 eyes, 3 on each side. I have the almost gill-like structures there, armor along the neck, which turns into the spines, and then obviously the little scoot spines running all the way down to the tail. This is where I started using a lot of armor in my designs, and I would have them with darker colors to accentuate it. Once again, with the newer Godzilla designs, you have 2014, which has a lot of armor that's a little darker in certain areas. And here I just wanted to make sure it was very apparent what was and what wasn't more armored areas of the body. And then running down the stomach is counter shaded by a slate color, which this whole kind of design and color scheme I carried over into a newer design, Gortholus, which is the middle top right here. It's obviously same green, same gray, darker shading for certain areas. The tail's now armored, so that's why that's a darker gray. And similar amount of toes. Ruger, Zilla, and Gortholus all have 3 toes, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. And from Zilla to Gortholus, Zilla only has 3 fingers. Gortholus I have with 4, similar to Godzilla. However, unlike Godzilla, the 4th finger is essentially just a claw. That's the one thing that always changes, is that I like it where it's a little bit more animal-like in structure, and it gives you a little bit more distinction between what you're doing if you're making a kaiju comparison to just wholly ripping off certain traits of Godzilla. And finally, moving on to this recent one is Sekigura. It's using a Ceratosaurus head, Ceratosaur osteoderms, similar Gortholus style fingers. However, this is 3-toed feet, but it's got plantigrade legs. And the color scheme is the most divergent out of the 6 here. Actually, the body is slate, while I'm using a timber color, is what that kind of gray look was called. So I used timber and slate for this color because it's an ice monster. And ice is something that people may do because, similar to how when I use Gigantis to subvert the idea of a feathered dinosaur giant monster, I did an ice giant dinosaur instead of a giant fire monster, which is ironic considering I'm comparing Gigantis to an ice dinosaur, fire, ice. You get the whole picture. But yeah, when it comes to power sets, a lot of these guys all have these similar fire or heated breaths. I wanted Sekigura to have an ice breath, and it represents like the Ice Age and stuff, because his whole story is having him be a harbinger of global climate change and stuff. And because of that, I was thinking, instead of going with the typical having the dinosaur monster be the fire monster, switched up and go ice. And speaking of story, story can always impact what you're doing with a design, and it's not just I want to change something that I've seen already. You can start from a story idea and then from there build off your kaiju. I've done that with a lot of these monsters. For example, going back down to Ruger here in the center, Ruger and Gigantis are in terms of literature, they're part of the same world. So Gigantis was made first, and then when I was thinking of Ruger, I wanted to make another dinosaur monster, but a lot slimmer, which is why Ruger has a thinner tail, very lean features, smaller arms compared to Gigantis' bigger arms. However, they still share similar traits, both being dinosaur-like monsters. And based on the idea of them both being dinosaur monsters, you can see where you can take the same basic idea of a dinosaur and just be completely divergent with it. And they're both just carnivorous dinosaurs. And speaking on carnivorous dinosaurs, aside from just tyrannosaurs and allosaurs, there are a ton of dinosaurs that you can use to make monsters with. Obviously, Spinosaurs, I don't really use Spinosaurs that much. I've never really liked the whole crocodile sailback. I'll just use a crocodile if I'm going to make something with like a long snout like that. Obviously, with Sekigura, Ceratosaurs. With Dinogillis, I use an Abelisaur. And actually with Gortholus, even though Gort and then Tholus based off of Majungatholus, also known as Majungasaurus, I used a Herrerasaur as the kind of base for the body, and I just changed it to be more erect. And because of that, that's why it obviously doesn't look on the onset to be similar to Herrerasaurus. So there's a lot of dinosaurs that you can use if you don't feel like just going with a basic T-Rex or Allosaur. Of course, you can also use raptors too. The one thing with raptors is that since there's feathers, you might have to make it look like it's got feathers on it, similar to something like Talon from Primal Rage. But that's fine and well and good. However, always have a place for why you're wanting to use certain coverings. For example, again with Gigantis, I wanted to subvert something, and because of that, that's why I gave him feathers. While in the case of Sekigahara, he's being an ice monster, and I wanted him to be very predominantly blue, so there was no reason to give him feathers. And even if like he had like a feathery covering, I think if I give it that blue color, it wouldn't have had as much of a pop or an impact. And since of course Godzilla came from the 50s and we're dealing with a lot of outdated structures for dinosaurs, don't be afraid to stick to that what you could call retro store stance, because that is a style and that is an aesthetic that has carried on since then, and there's no reason to change that because it is aesthetically pleasing. It's been aesthetically pleasing for a long time, and you can subvert that if you want to, but just because it's not scientifically accurate for dinosaurs to look like that does not mean dinosaur monsters themselves should change to accommodate for that. That is a problem that the 98 Godzilla itself went through. Trying to be scientifically accurate is not an excuse to change designs or make designs different for that sake, unless you want to be hard sci-fi. And by hard sci-fi, I mean you are paying attention to every single detail about your monster, or your monster isn't really that big, it's essentially around the same size as a normal dinosaur, then sure, go for it. But it also comes down to preference too. When it comes to my monsters, I like my monsters being more retrosaur in terms of their structure. It gives them a greater ability to fight better. They have more character in certain cases. With traditional dinosaur, not really traditional, but modern depictions of dinosaurs, designs get really murky, and that is something that you don't want to do with your design. You don't want it to blend in with the rest of everything else. So yeah, if you're gonna be working on a Dinozilla, be cognizant of these few things. One, think about what kind of posture you're going to use. Are you going to use a modern design, or are you going to use a retrosaur kind of baseline for your posture? Number two, expand your knowledge of what kind of dinosaurs you want to use. So don't just go for the basic T-Rex, basic Allosaur, even the basic Raptor. Expand your knowledge, look at other recreations of dinosaurs to see what you'd want to pull from. Powers, don't just go for the basic fire breath, see what else you can do. And once you were able to really understand the basic essentials, because these three essentials are what really make up the design of Godzilla itself, and you understand that and you can expand out from that, I think that you can always make a good Dinozilla design that isn't just, oh, it's basic Godzilla. So yeah, I really thank you all for watching this. Of course, it's not super long, but it's just me kind of giving my thoughts, talking for a little bit, and you just kind of listening to me with a little bit of advice and a little bit of me just rambling. So I hope you all enjoyed. I'm Zilla, signing out.